since a long time ago. Yes, Mr. Mitchell.
I wanted to ask the commissioners, there are a lot of benchmarks, a lot of data that needs to be gathered. Is there any sense of a time frame of how long all these things are going to take before they can get an idea?
I'll ask Perry to respond. He's the caucus group leader with this.
There are many things that we can request and start a process with state resources to, say, start a data collection process. There are some things that require others to release the information. And so really that's the process that's going to start beginning tomorrow morning, where the Department of Natural Resources and the local officials will get together and review sort of their laundry list of needs that they created over the last 3 days. And each of those has a unique time frame, each of those has a unique time schedule. Some of those things exist today, they just need to be given to the commission. There's some things that do not exist today that then you have to go out and find the right subject matter expert to create that information. So it just depends on the item and the quantity of information.
So no guesstimation of the timeline?
No. At this point, this is really a harvesting of sort of an understanding and onboarding these commissioners. And so it would be premature for anyone to stand here today and say we are 6 months, 9 months, 1 month, a year out from any type of a situation.
Can I ask one more question? On the stability, you know, there's a lot of talk about stability around the sinkhole and the subsidence and everything else. In October of 2012, I asked that they establish a elevation benchmark in the community. And to that point, I haven't heard a word. They have never addressed it at one of these meetings since we've been coming. If they've done it, we don't know about it. We don't know what the elevation benchmark is, if it's been established. You know, we just don't seem to hear anything about the community. The whole emphasis is on the sinkhole, and we are the ones that are affected. So when can we hear about the benchmark in the community, what it is, has it been established?
Yeah, Nick, what's going on right now, and we just reviewed a report by RESPEC through Texas Brine on the monitoring. I can assure you that benchmarks have been established in the community. In addition, they're using INSAR, which is a satellite-based system to basically bounce microwaves, I think, off reflectors so that they can look for differential settlement. That is ongoing. RESPEC, I believe, had one of their top settlement experts here last week. It was in the Texas Brine Daily Report. I think he was here for settlement. Is that right, Mark?
Yes.
Yeah, he was here. I can assure you right now that Texas Brine has got top experts working on it. Unfortunately, in a swamp environment, it's not a real easy thing to do, but they are working aggressively on it so they can monitor and quantify the settlement.
All right, can we get I love maps. Can we get a map? Can you identify the locations in the community that are being measured? And give us the benchmark elevation at each one of those sites. Tell us when they've been established and how often do you check? And where can we find that data? Can it be put on the blog?
Go ahead, Bruce.
Gary, we've done two level surveys, optical surveys with benchmarkers. All that data has been submitted to DNR and CB&I. All those benchmarks have been established. So yeah, I mean, we're doing it every 30 days and then moving it to 60 days.
Nick, that gets...
So at what point did it get started? What's the start date?
Well, the actual surveys have been taking place for years over the dome on behalf of the operations. When this event occurred, we expanded the network further west out to include Mighty Corn, the reflectors that are out in the swamp for the INSAR. So it's a much broader scope now. And we've had 2 cycles of surveys there, but as Dr. Haycock said, We have we have a record of 2 optical surveys, level surveys conducted by Fenstermacher that were done specifically to monitor the effects of the sinkhole. Okay, the general area around the sinkhole and then out to the west and then portions of Bayou Corn, Highway 70, and beyond. However, there is a record of level surveys that have taken place for years, maybe up to 10 years, over the entire dome. So there's a good base knowledge of what's taking place there. As Dr. Heacox mentioned, we've also begun, months ago, the process of satellite flyovers for what's called INSAR imagery. And that is a process that takes repeated flyovers and a large stack of data in order to get resolution that's really acceptable. And I would say we're probably about halfway through that process now. We're already beginning to see meaningful results. So, and just to answer your question, Mr. Romero, the areas that are covered are basically every square inch in which a satellite can reflect. So a rooftop, a barn top, a road surface, any fixed object. The areas that we cannot image by satellite are those areas that are covered by vegetation or changing fluid levels, like the swamp. And so to deal with that, we put reflectors, artificial reflectors out in the swamp. So we now have beacons all along the critical areas that are filling in those gaps.
All right, so then you're telling me that you've got a benchmark elevation on my house. So when am I going to get that information?
We could provide information now, but I don't want to tell you that it's reliable because of the stacking required, the repetitive flyovers that are required. We've been told by TRE, this is the contractor in Canada, that it can take up to 12 months to get a sufficient volume of images from flyovers in order to narrow the resolution down to an acceptable level. And we're about 6-7 months into that process now.
Okay. We asked in October of 2012 to establish a benchmark prior to doing the bidding so that we would see what the bidding had, what kind of effect it had on our community and in our home. If someone wants to stay, but their property begins to subside and they begin to have structural damage and stuff, or the possibility of it could be there, that makes a big difference in what they plan to do, whether they plan to stay or leave. So, you know, it's not one of those things that we can go on forever and ever and ever.
Mr. Romero,
6 months ago.
Mr. Romero, we'll get you the data from the Fenstermacher surveys. I think the first one was done in February, the second one was in March, maybe a little off on the date, but we submitted it to the agency, we'll get that to you.
Yeah, actually, Texas Brine started the flyovers, I believe it was November, when they first did the first transit over the community. The optical surveys, we have reviewed it, a task force reviewed it. It is on DNR website. As Bruce told Nick, we'll get him the survey. In addition, I will work with Texas Brine, and because there's interest in that, where the reflectors are, we'll get a map, which DNR will then be able to post on their website so you can see where all the monitors are. The other thing that's going on, though, is all the monitoring along Highway 70 now. And that's DOTD is monitoring that. They have been pretty much from the time this started. They now have instrumentation on the bridges and a couple intermediate stations. And what we will do is work with DOTD and see if we can get at least the location of those stations. You can go down by the Bayou Corn Bridge and see the new station. It's on the south side of the bridge down towards Dennis Landry's property. And that's real-time monitoring, as I understand it. So the subsidence is being monitored right now. I wish I had answers for you, but a sufficient amount of data has to be collected so you can see what's going on. Because we're looking at very tiny changes here on the order of 1/4 of an inch or less. So it does take some time.
It doesn't take much to start
I know.
damaging structures.
I know.
Foundations.
I hear you. Okay, this is 277 days since sinkhole appeared. This is how we start our briefing every day at CB&I, and this is how I started the commissioners' briefing I gave on Monday. We do this every day to remind ourselves why we're here. The progress since the first part of April, when we last talked, actually it was in March, we negotiated a new microseismic array with Texas Brine. This will be a 3,000-foot array into the salt. This will be monitoring stability in the salt long term. The TVC Geophone 3, this is on the western side of the sinkhole. This is also known as the 1,000-foot core well. That is online and streaming data right now. Both geophones are working. Methane has been detected. Has been detected below some floor slabs, and I'm going to show you a little bit of analysis on that. And the 3D seismic has been completed. The initial interpretation was turned over to Texas, or has been presented by Texas Brine. Texas Brine has turned over the initial piece of data. This is a very large data set. They have turned over the initial piece of data to DNR, and our expert, Don Marlin, who you've heard before, is now in the process of analyzing that and doing the third-party independent review that was requested by the parish. So all this is going on to address the situation. The seismic array has now been updated. It's located around here. The initial seismic data of what we are finding, the locations of all the micro-earthquakes that have been recorded, as you can expect, most of the micro-earthquakes have been located around the Oxy 3 cavern and in the salt. We do have some minor earthquakes out away from that in vicinity of the other caverns, but the vast majority of micro-earthquakes are located inside this red circle, either down in the salt right at the top of the Oxy 3 cavern at about 3,400 feet, or they're up in the cap rock at a depth of about 1,000 feet. So that's where the micro-earthquakes that are being recorded by all the seismic instruments are being observed. The shallow gas migration into homes, last year we talked about this, that the concern is that gas is coming from the disturbed rock zone into the aquifer. It's accumulating against the clay, but then it's finding its way up through preferred pathways into the surface environment and can cause problem for slab-on-grade homes, unventilated crawl-space home, but not for pier homes. Methane has been detected below 2 homes at LEL concentrations over time. Those concentrations that have gone down. We did have one sample that trended towards thermogenic gas, and I'll show you that plot here in a minute. Thermogenic, as you can remember, is natural gas from deep formation as opposed to shallow swamp gas. The gas, the methane coming up that's causing all the problems in the bayous and below the homes is thermogenic gas. That's gas from deep, it's natural gas, and that's what we're looking for. We do have one geoprobe well in the community at 30 feet down south of Highway 70 towards the pad where the helicopter lands. That initially started off as biogenic gas, it is now thermogenic, which means the thermogenic gas from depth has moved upward and it has displaced the shallow swamp gas. And so what we talked to you about last November as one of the concerns we had was the deep gas in the MRA coming up and displacing the shallow gas. We now have one geoprobe well in the community that is exhibiting this. In addition, we have a second geoprobe well that we sampled within the last 2 weeks over by where all the flares are along Highway 70 east of the community. We do have one well over there now that is showing a mixed gas signature. It's about half and half biogenic and thermogenic gas. So unfortunately,